Well, congratulations, you just died.
What?
Well, and now you don't know what to do. But you can still be helpful as a Clove, but you just have no idea when to smoke, how to smoke, and how to help your teammates correctly. Well, fortunately for you, I'm here, and I can help you. I can teach you how to smoke, when to save your smokes, and how to position them to make sure that all of the things that you do after you died will be very valuable. Let's start by focusing on position of your character. If you're playing defense on Ascent, your role should be that of an anchor. Position yourself strategically on either the A or the B side. You can also hold areas like the B market, for example, or A short or tree, because from here you will still have access to smokes for sites. But typically try avoiding overextending to mid. Dying in mid can leave your team vulnerable, as it diminishes your ability to assist in a side hold or contribute to a retake during the post-plant scenarios. Staying alive and then maintaining a strong presence on site is crucial for supporting your team effectively throughout the round. If you like this kind of educational content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It really helps a ton for me to create more content like this, and if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment. I always reply to every single one of them. Now let's talk about a common mistake that happens in ranked when the Clove player peeks from short and dies to the B-Link player and leaves the Euro player alone on A side. You can still try to remedy this situation by doing useful smokes. So what are your options? The option is to scare away the opponents from pushing the side that has only one player now on site, because your opponents, after killing you on B short, will have the incentive to rotate from their default positions into A main and push the solo player that is there on site. Now, you should spam your smokes. This is the moment when you have to use them as an intimidation tactic. So we will spam both of our smokes at the same time to make sure to drive people away from the A side into the B side, where our majority of the players still are. So when we die here on short, I immediately spam the smokes on A side and on A short, just to make sure that the opponents are not that eager to go through. A deep smoke on short makes certain that the player now as Omen can't really clean what is happening on short. If he has to push through, well, he might actually take more time. The same happens on A main. The players, when they see a smoke like this, now they have to clean also the area in wine, and they will also have to waste like 12 seconds, which will maybe allow the players from B to rotate towards A. So they might actually, because of that, be scared of pushing into A side, even though there's less players on the A side, but they can't know this because our smokes are slowing them down and making sure to use more utility before actually advancing. Now the chances are that we're still gonna lose this round because we just essentially gifted one death for 3 at the beginning of the round, but spamming smoke like this at the beginning when you made that mistake might actually help remedy this round and still win it if your opponents are gonna be scared of your smokes, and instead of pushing that A main and going into the side where you're alone, they might actually all go back to B main, where your opponents will meet the face of 3 of your teammates and maybe even the utility of the Cypher there. So remember, when you died early and the opponents are still very far away from their goal of going to a site, spam your smokes, make sure to make them scared onto going into the direction where less of your teammates are. So pay attention to the minimap, use the smokes to drive people away from the location where the players are not. Now let's use the same mistake but with different positions. We die early on short because we overpeak and the Omen punishes our mistake. This is like first 5 seconds. Now majority of our forces are on A side while the Cypher plays alone on B. So I want to remedy my mistake by pushing away players from B and mid, because mid currently has no player. So when I die here, I immediately smoke bottom mid, which kinda showcases that someone might be here in those positions, even pushing out of mid, to make sure to take the map control after my mistake. Now that will most likely make the player from B short and top mid very anxious and slow them down, right? Which can also be combined with another smoke, but if I die on short, I will probably not have the range to B main, which I would like to do if I die here, right? To make sure that the solo player on B and the empty space on mid is not taken. Use the smoke on bottom mid, use the smoke on top mid. Just slow the players down, make sure that they do not want to take the space on mid where the players from our team are not there. And if that's the case, maybe the race now joins the players from A main and they will actually go into A main with the spike towards 3 of our players. So again, we're able still after our death to get a little bit of an advantage, maybe if we push the opponents into our stack. Now let's see how we can help the players on site during the execute or in postplant during the retake when we died on short or died on A site. First, we're gonna talk about the smokes that you will be using when you're still alive on site or when you're dead, but your opponents are still doing the execute or didn't even start it. So you will have to defend this site. Those 4 smokes that you will see here will be the most common smokes that you will use before the plant gets done. One of the biggest mistakes that I see Clove players do is not understand what is their role when it comes to the smokes post-mortem. So, when you die, let's say it's a 4v5 situation now because you just died by overpeaking on A side, most Cloves will instantly smoke the main. Now, that's a problem because in many games you will see exactly this situation. Clove dies, 5 players A main, and now they have to push. Now, the problem is, if you put the smoke over here like this, your opponents might actually not push and just say, you know what, we have an advantage already, let's go to B side instead. Now, because you died early and because you used the smoke, you pushed away the opponents from the people in your team that rotated to defend the A side. And the reason for that is only the Clove mistake. So instead, what you should be doing, if you know that the players are already in A main, separated left and right, you can use a smoke to ensure that your teammate can still fight on site with a player that might be in A main, but at the same time, you don't make them run away. So use a smoke on one of the sides so you're able to now take a gunfight with the player who's isolated in wine and make sure that maybe they will overpeak and you will get a equalizer. Because when on defense you're in a 4v5 situation, it's incredibly hard to win those rounds. So you cannot really just push them away, because if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna play time and the opponents will just over-rotate now to the other side, when you over-rotated towards A side, you will most likely make a retake in a 4v5 situation, and that is not a good scenario. You want to find equalizer kills before the plant happens. So when you're dead on A side and you want to help your team, don't do the main smoke, do maybe the smoke to isolate the players behind main, or if they are executing towards the side, use the smoke to make sure that creates a little bit of safe space for the players coming to side. For example, the smoke between the Jenny and the dice will help the players from heaven to jump down and now play against the players who are storming towards side. So you, as the Clove player who died and made a mistake, now it's incredibly important to understand how to not make more mistakes, because you can still do them. Make sure that you will be able to reinforce your teammates instead of scaring away the opponents. Another quick tip that I will give you is that if when you know that your opponents have flashes, don't make a smoke like this. This is a decent smoke, it doesn't leak too much on site, but when your opponents have flashes, you can actually try to get a little bit of an advantage against them by putting the smoke a little bit deeper like this. The main reason for using the smoke to be deeper than normal against flashes is because it's easier to now hold an angle against a player who is gonna flash through. Imagine this, if I'm a Phoenix that goes through the smoke and just flashes out, I am able to just wide swing because the smoke might end up a little bit on the side. So right here, I'm flashing out and I'm wide swinging, and it's incredibly hard to hold the position of this player when you're blinded, but you can still reply to him by pre-firing the angles, right? So you can force him to be more in an enclosed space by doing the smoke deeper, because now when the Phoenix is gonna come out of this smoke, he's gonna be still in this edge, in this corner over here, so it's easier for you to pre-fire someone like this when you know that the flash is coming. Also, when you hold it from heaven, for example, over here, and the smoke is deeper, it's easier for you to also spam the corners because the people are still stuck in this position in the tunnel because, well, the smoke is deeper and they are afraid to go out of the smoke before the flash pops. Now let's talk about a different scenario, but that begins with the same way, when you make a mistake and you die on A site, and now your teammates face a post plant in a 4v5 scenario, and it's incredibly important for you to understand two things. One, stop spamming smokes. When you know that you're gonna be playing a retake, you need to save both smokes to be available when your team wants to go. So try to communicate that you're gonna use 2 smokes when the retake gonna happen. Try to coordinate it as well, because you know that you can help with those smokes. Be vocal, tell your teammates when you want the retake to start. Be an IGL for a moment. Second rule is incredibly important. When you're doing the retake, one of your smokes has to be put on the spike, because that allows you to fake the defuse or actually get the half or even stick the defuse while your teammates are able to fight the non-smoked positions like main or tree, because those players from the opposing team now have to peek and try to kill the diffuser that might not even be there, but they don't know because there's a smoke on spike. But now let's talk about the timings, because that's so important to understand during a retake. You should not just spam 2 smokes at the same time. You should understand when and which smokes you want to do by looking at your teammate's position. So let's go one by one. Let's say I used 1 smoke when I was defending the site. Now it's on cooldown, probably around like 15 seconds, but I have 1 smoke available and my teammates are doing the retake from both heaven and tree. I have to decide which smoke I want to use to help them go onto site. Before this retake starts, I already have a plan how to help. I see that majority of my players are going through heaven. That means that those players who are gonna go through first onto site, and Yoru will have to be patient and wait for this retake to actually start before he goes through short. So my first smoke is gonna be the one on heaven that will help them actually go onto site, and I will explain that in a moment. And then when my teammates are going onto site and are going into the gunfights and are hopefully killing the opponents, the second smoke is gonna go on the spike, so one of the players can start defusing while the other players are able to fight the players in main and in other parts of the site. So why is this smoke so important on heaven? It's a multi-level smoke that helps you isolate angles and drop onto site unknown. By having the smoke on heaven like this, you're able to isolate angles one by one to make sure that you can get into a gunfight with only one opponent before you go actually to site. It's incredibly important that you help your teammates on heaven in this way. But not only that, with this smoke, you're also able to go into Jenny like this by jumping down and not be exposed to A main players, so you can isolate the angle on Jenny itself. But also, when you go down from the smoke here, you will be able to land into hell without being exposed to A main or Jenny. But now let's say you want to help the players from short, so you're gonna first use the one of the smokes for the players to short to go through, and by that you can use 2 options. One, to help get out of the doors to isolate the player on switch and try to kill him without being exposed to the players from Jenny. Or the second smoke is actually having a 2 function here. You can use it already to cover the spike and also help the players from short to come out and make sure that they can fight the player in switch without being exposed to Dice or Jenny at the same time. In game, it will look something like this. First option, when we want to fight the player in switch. So we're now isolating the player in switch without being exposed to the player from Jenny. And second option, when we use it for spike and the corner at the same time. So we cover the spike, we cover the corner, so now I can swing and check switch without being exposed to Dice, without being exposed to Jenny. Many of you will probably ask at this point, why don't you just smoke main instead? And well, my answer is you can smoke A main. That's also helpful, but in most cases, your players need help actually getting to site first without dying. So that's why I recommend using the smoke on heaven and using the smoke on doors or on Jenny here to make sure that those players can go out and try to fight the players on site first, because that is more important. The smoke on A main is also okay, but it's not as creative and as much of an impact like the other smokes that I've shown you. let's summarize what we learned. If you died early on site and your teammates are already rotating towards you and you want them to fight, don't scare your opponents away by smoking a main. Try to isolate the angles for your teammates to fight and try to equalize the score. If the opponents are already coming to side and are doing the execute and they planted, save your smokes, don't spam them. Make sure to utilize them fully when the retake is starting. Save one smoke for the spike. Thank you very much for watching, hope you guys enjoyed the video and see you next time, bye bye. Today's episode is sponsored by ELGATO. Go to elgato.com for the newest hardware for streamers, use the link from the description below and the code for 5% off. Thank you ELGATO for sponsoring the stream.